So what exactly is an AI accelerator? In my hand, this is one from Baidu. It's called the Kunlun K200, and it cost me about $100. This one is from Meta. It's the MTIA V1, I think. I've got a V2 as well. And the reason why I'm showing you these is we live in a world where there is a good amount of silicon out there dedicated purely to AI acceleration. And a lot of them use the same principles as GPUs: configurable, high performance, and depending on what exactly you need out of compute to memory and compute to power and all the other metrics that go into the design, and also how many you're going to build and scale, that's how you build your chip. Now, the question has always become, where is the next 10x? Where is the next 100x? Where is the next million X uplift going to come from? And does that come from things like digital compute? Now, with these, programmable solutions, essentially, there are knobs you can twist and pull, and there's plenty of startups in the industry doing that, and you can find out about them all on this channel. But the reason why I'm making this video today is that one of the most impressive startups producing some obscene numbers in terms of tokens per second generated on their hardware has just been acquired by AMD. Let's talk Taalas.
What's your minimum specification?
So those of you who have been following my content will have heard about Taalas. Taalas is a company that has come from the mind of the first founder of TensTorrent. After he left TensTorrent, went and created the company called Taalas. And the whole point about Taalas, when they came out of stealth, was to say, hey, we've got an idea which is going to break the internet, break how fast you can run AI tokens. And it's going to be this concept of baking the AI model into the chip. Now, a lot of people laughed, saying that you're making a non-programmable chip for a custom model sounded like lots of work, sounded like it would only be applicable for a short amount of time, given the rate of pace of how AI is developing. And this coming from a startup, well, if NVIDIA is not doing it, why should anybody else even bother to care? And that's why Taalas existed, to kind of prove everybody wrong. And when we covered Taalas back then, we came up with a few theories of what they're doing based with what was on their website and our interactions with the CEO Lebija and his team. What they said is that we have a fundamental design based on SRAM and compute that we build, and we build lots of these chips. Then you come around and you tell us, well, hey, we've got a model. These are our weights. These are our activations. Make it go fast. And with that initial chip, they've only built the first 4 layers, metal layers. The next 10 metal layers is how you route the data around the chip. And by routing the weights and activations, by routing part of the model in that upper layer metal stack by design, means that you should be able to extract lots of performance. If you're familiar with Intel's EASIC acquisition almost a decade ago at this point, it sounds that familiar. How can you do a few metal layers of a chip and then later come around and say, now we're going to build exactly how the chip communicates with itself on top of it? Well, what Taalas decided to do is, let's build the compute in the way that the data moves to begin with. It almost sounds like data flow. And back then, the CEO, Lebija Bajik, said, yes, we understand that models are fast-paced, and if you buy a chip for a specific model, it can be outdated in 6 months. But that's okay. Their design is meant to take that into account, such that if you're changing your models every 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, you can buy a set of brand new chips that might not be in the latest process node, but because they are 100x faster than competition, that still makes it worthwhile. And you might think, well, isn't that a lot of silicon waste? We're not exactly short of silicon wafers right now in the industry. Now, that was back when they were announced. Later on, I believe about 12 to 18 months, they actually came to market with their first benchmark numbers and their first chip. And their first chip is called the Hardcore 1, because apparently it was hardcore. Now, the metrics kind of sound a bit insane. Just going off the website here, we have a technology demonstrator chip. This chip is built on TSMC 6 nanometer at near reticle size, 815 square mil, with 53 billion transistors, and you put enough of them to fill a 2.5 kilowatt server. So we're probably looking at something around 8 chips. And it's running the Llama 3.1 8 billion parameter model. You know, it looks like a PCI card. There's a lot of power delivery there. That's probably why it's got a high volt 12 power rail there, so it's hitting at least 300 watts per card. But the numbers here are what's insane. Tokens per second per user. We're seeing NVIDIA H200 at around 230. We're seeing Grok at 600. We're seeing Cerebrus at 2000. Numbers that I can verify actually exist. Taalas are saying they can do 17,000 tokens per second on this chip. And of course, nobody believed them until they built a website around their chip. You can go check this out now. It's called chatjimmy.ai. And if I just go for it here for a second, let's hopefully we won't death hug the website. It says, "Chat Jimmy, how can I help you today?" And let's ask it a question. Say, what is in the bubbles in pop? Generated in 33 milliseconds, the answer came at a speed of 14,200 tokens per second. Yeah, when this demo came out, you can imagine a lot of people made stuff appear in their pants. It's an obscene number. Now, don't forget, this is on a chip that is built just for this model, just for Llama 3 8.1, 3.18 billion parameter. This is not a programmable chip. The chip can't run any other model. It can only be used for this. But is the speed up from 200 tokens per second to 14,200 in this demo, or based on their numbers, 17,000 tokens per second, worth the effort for a company that has an established workflow who is going to deploy to millions of users? Yeah, you would buy a new infrastructure set every 6 months if your speed up goes from 200 to 17,000. And that's what Taalas were betting on. Now, Taalas as a company, I believe, around 60 to 100 people. They've done some fundraising. Clearly, they've got a TSMC 6 nanometer chip. And they hadn't really started talking about customers yet because people were still going, wow, on this chip. Thing is, before we've even had time to let this settle and hear about the next story, the next chapter of Taalas, it turns out AMD has come in and acquired the company. I got the email literally 3 hours ago, and hopefully this video is going live as the announcement is being made. But the announcement is just simply AMD has signed an agreement of understanding to acquire Taalas. Standard M&A procedure. No money is being mentioned in this acquisition because it doesn't need to be. What will happen is that the team will report to AMD's head of AI, Vamsi Bopanna, and will form under their AI group. But it sounds like, based on what extra information I can get out of AMD, is that they will stay almost independent of, they will stay as a team rather than being split up and put into a bunch of other places. Now, Lubija, the CEO, he actually spent a lot of time at AMD earlier in his career. That's how him and Jim Keller met, and that's how TensTorrent came to be. So now he has an exit. His company has been acquired and is going back home to the mothership. However, a lot of people are going to ask, well, what does this mean for AMD? AMD already has AI silicon, right? They have Instinct. They have EPYC CPUs. We literally just came back from Advancing AI, where they spent several days talking to us about rack scale Helios and the next generation of AI compute. Well, is one thing to acquire people because they're smart, and for Taalas to go and do this and deploy this is smart. The next question is, does the product fit AMD's portfolio? Does the hardcore one fit AMD's ethos? And you got to think, AMD is partnering with Cerebras for fast scale inference, but that's still a programmable solution. Lisa, the CEO of AMD, has always said what really happens in deployments of AI is that you have a mixture of silicon doing a number of things. Now, the fact that we're talking about agentic AI and the fact that we have the CPU in the mix, the CPU might be calling small models, big models. It'll be deciding what to do with tools around those models. Thing is, if a tool chain is fixed and it knows what models are being called, this is where Taalas can really help. This is where, on their first generation chip, if they're only doing 17,000 tokens per second, who knows what they're going to do with second generation chips, third generation chips. You add in expertise with AMD's packaging technology, AMD's upcoming SerDes and optical technology. Just like in, honestly, when NVIDIA announced the acquisition of Grok, I did kind of say, how does that fit into the ecosystem? And NVIDIA kind of proved that by saying, for every rack of NVIDIA, you need 9 racks of Grok for a trillion parameter model. These aren't designed to do trillion parameter models. These are designed for the agentic mini workloads that are going to happen in every single request that goes online to AMD's partners. It actually makes sense. Now, obviously, AMD is not really saying any more than that on this acquisition, just that it's expected to close at the end of the year. The team will report in to Vamsi, but still stay a team. Products or how they'll be integrated, whether the hardcore one will actually be part of AMD's portfolio going forward, or whether it'll just be seen as a test chip for something better and bigger in 2-3 years, don't know yet. Or maybe it will be involved in some Xilinx stuff as well. Kind of makes sense, right? It's a DSP on steroids just for AI. And I know for a lot of people with a big name like AMD behind it, and AMD doing this manufacturing model, assuming all the patents are secure and the licensing is in place, yeah, sounds pretty good. Can't wait. I had a chance to speak with our good friend Sally Ward-Foxton, who also got this news early, and we spoke about it for a bit.
Yeah, I suspected AMD might be going to acquire somebody after the whole NVIDIA Grok thing broke earlier this year, but the Taalas thing was a bit of a surprise. In retrospect, maybe it shouldn't have been. I see Taalas as analogous to Grok in some ways. They have this entirely SRAM-based architecture that needs many, many, many chips to hold a big model, a bit like how Grok did, but then of course it makes it a perfect fit alongside a big GPU. To handle the decode portion. So yeah, can definitely see Taalas in that. I can definitely see how they fit together.
Does it not seem a bit early for Taalas to be acquired?
So they had a chip. They had a demo chip, but they didn't publish a roadmap per se. Their proposition's entirely based on making the chip for the workload as it emerges and turning it around very quickly and cheaply. So I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that it works. They also, because they only run one model at a time per chip, they don't really need much of a software stack, which is the other sticking point for startups usually in this kind of scenario. So I'm not sure what else they would have developed or what more I would have wanted to see as AMD, because Taalas is such a unique technical proposition. I think it didn't surprise me.
Is this just a play to agentic AI and disaggregated inference?
I think it's certainly a disaggregated inference play. I mean, the release says as much. I think it says something like the Taalas chips will go in the same system as the Instinct GPUs, which to me is obviously a disaggregated inference play. I think the agentic thing is still emerging a little bit, so it's tough to tell. But this Taalas thing is very workload specific, very model specific. So maybe the agentic thing is coming further down the line.
Any estimates on price?
So I wrote a piece about this early in the year saying the 20 billion that NVIDIA is supposed to have paid or to have done the deal with for Grok basically pushed every chip startup's valuation up to 20 billion or to the region of 20 billion. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's in the billions. I know they hadn't taken on much funding, maybe tens of millions only, which is not very much for an AI chip company. So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if it's in the billions, but probably not the tens of billions, I wouldn't think.
So let me know your thoughts on this acquisition. I mean, we've heard of other companies, other AI startups being acquired, to Snap, to Meta, and Amazon's taken one or two, Intel's taken at least three. Do what you want with that information. This doesn't sound like AMD replacing a team. This sounds like AMD adding to the team. And when you partner it with Instinct, with EPYC, with FPGA, with the Rockham team and Anush, assuming the front end all fits and the software is scalable, yeah, bring it on. And if you love my t-shirt, you can find it at shop.techtechpotato.com. Link in the description.